The darkness of space suddenly erupted with light as 50,000 alien warships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. The massive fleet stretched across the void like a metal wall, their black holes reflecting the distant light of the sun. Each ship was the size of a city, bristling with weapons that had burned 1,000 worlds to ash. On the bridge of the human flagship Defiance, Admiral Jack Morrison watched the enemy fleet through the main view screen. His weathered face showed no fear, only the calm determination of a man who had been preparing for this moment his entire career. Behind him, his crew worked quietly at their stations, each one handpicked from Earth's finest military academies. "Sir, incoming transmission," announced Lieutenant Kate Phillips from the communications console. Her voice was steady despite the magnitude of what they were facing. "It's on all frequencies." "Put it through," Morrison replied, straightening his uniform. The view screen flickered, and the face of an alien commander appeared. Commander Thexval of the Valdari Imperial Navy was a towering figure with pale blue skin and eyes like black holes. When he spoke, his voice carried the arrogance of a species that had never known defeat. "Primitive humans of Earth," Thexval began, his words translated by the ship's computer. "I am Commander Thexval of the 12th Conquest Fleet. Your pathetic species has been selected for immediate termination. You have exactly 72 hours to surrender unconditionally, or we will reduce your world to molten rock. This is a fate that has befallen every species foolish enough to resist the Valdari Empire." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Morrison's crew looked to him, waiting for orders. Outside the view screen, the alien fleet continued its slow advance toward Earth, confident in their overwhelming numerical superiority. Morrison walked to the front of the bridge, his boots clicking on the metal deck. "Kate, open a channel to all Earth Defense Force vessels and orbital stations." "Channel open, sir." Morrison's voice carried across the solar system, reaching every human outpost from Mercury to Pluto. "This is Admiral Morrison to all EDF units. The Valdari have just made the biggest mistake in their empire's history. They think they're facing a primitive species with 200 ships and no hope of survival." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. On planets and space stations throughout the system, humans smiled grimly as they received their orders. "Initiate Protocol 7. Repeat, Protocol 7 is now active. All civilian evacuation procedures are in effect immediately. All military personnel, prepare for full system defense activation." Lieutenant Phillips's fingers danced across a console, sending coded signals to every corner of the solar system. What the Valdari saw as abandoned mining platforms suddenly came alive with power. Derelict space stations that had been floating dead in space for decades began to hum with energy. Cargo ships that appeared to be carrying simple supplies revealed their true nature. Morrison turned to his weapons officer, Commander Robert Hayes. "Bob, are our friends in the asteroid belt ready?" Hayes grinned, his fingers hovering over his control panel. "Been ready for 20 years, sir. Every mining station, every cargo hauler, every piece of space junk between Mars and Jupiter is locked and loaded. And the outer planets? Saturn's rings are full of surprises, sir. So are Jupiter's moons. The Valdari are going to get a very warm welcome." Morrison nodded with satisfaction. For decades, humanity had been preparing for exactly this scenario. While other species in the galaxy had focused on building bigger ships and more powerful weapons, humans had taken a different approach. They had turned their entire solar system into a fortress. What appeared to be simple mining operations were actually weapons platforms. Cargo ships were loaded with kinetic penetrators instead of supplies. Even the space debris floating throughout the system had been carefully positioned and weaponized. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Phillips, "the Valdari fleet is passing Jupiter. They'll reach the asteroid belt in 6 hours." Morrison smiled for the first time since the alien fleet had arrived. "Perfect. Kate, send a message to all stations. Tell them the hunting season officially opens in 6 hours." As the message went out across the system, humanity prepared to teach the Valdari Empire why Earth had survived for 4.5 billion years. The aliens thought they were facing a weak, primitive species. They were about to discover that the most dangerous predator in the galaxy was the one that looked harmless until it was too late. The trap was set. Now, all they had to do was wait for the Valdari to walk into it. The Valdari fleet moved through space like a black tide of death, their massive warships casting shadows across the moons of Jupiter from their command bridges. Alien officers looked out at the scattered remnants of human civilization with barely concealed disgust. Broken mining stations drifted aimlessly through the asteroid belt. Old cargo ships moved slowly between the rocks, their engines barely functioning. To the Valdari, it looked exactly like what they expected from a primitive species on the edge of extinction. Commander Thexval stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the pathetic display through his view screen. "Look at them," he sneered to his tactical officer, "clinging to their worthless rocks and scrap metal. How did such a weak species ever survive long enough to reach space?" His officer nodded in agreement. "Should we destroy these vessels as we pass, Commander?" "Don't waste the ammunition," Thexval replied with a dismissive wave. "They're not even worth the energy it would take to fire our weapons. Let them watch as we burn their world." What the Valdari didn't know was that every single object they were dismissing had been carefully placed and prepared over the last 30 years. Deep inside the largest asteroid in the belt, Captain Tom Bradley sat in a command center that had been hollowed out of solid rock. The walls around him hummed with the power of fusion reactors, and dozens of screens showed him every angle of the approaching alien fleet. Bradley had spent 15 years living inside this asteroid, overseeing construction of humanity's greatest deception. What looked like a simple mining operation from the outside was actually a fortress that could house 10,000 people and enough weapons to destroy a small moon. "They're taking the bait," Bradley reported into his headset, his voice carrying across space to Admiral Morrison. "Moving right through the belt exactly as we predicted. Arrogant bastards aren't even scanning properly." Morrison's voice crackled back through the communication system. "Beautiful work, Tom. How long until they're in position?" Bradley checked his tactical display, watching as thousands of red dots representing enemy ships moved deeper into the asteroid belt. 2 hours until they reach the kill zone. They're staying in formation, not even bothering to spread out. It's like they're doing us a favor. Around him, Bradley's crew worked quietly at their stations. These weren't regular military personnel, but miners, engineers, and construction workers who had volunteered for the most dangerous job in human space. They had spent years living in secret, turning the asteroid belt into humanity's greatest weapon. "Phase 1 complete," Morrison's voice announced across the entire solar system. "All units, prepare for Revelation Protocol." Those words sent a signal that had been decades in the making. Throughout the solar system, objects that had been hiding their true nature began to transform. On the surface of what appeared to be a broken cargo ship near Mars, metal panels slid away to reveal rows of missile tubes. Inside the ship, Captain Lisa Parker smiled as her weapons came online. "Finally," she whispered to her crew, "I was getting tired of pretending to be a cargo hauler." Near Saturn, a collection of what looked like abandoned fuel tanks suddenly sprouted sensor arrays and weapon mounts. Commander Mike Stevens had been living inside these fake tanks for 3 years, maintaining the illusion while building one of the most powerful weapon platforms in human space. Even closer to Earth, old mining platforms that had supposedly been shut down for decades revealed their true purpose. Hidden compartments opened to expose railgun batteries that could punch holes through battleship armor. Asteroid mining rigs extended massive weapon arrays that had been disguised as drilling equipment. The deception was on a scale that had never been attempted before. Humanity had essentially rebuilt their entire solar system while making it look like they were barely surviving. Every piece of space junk, every abandoned station, every seemingly broken ship was part of an intricate trap that had taken 30 years to complete. Captain Bradley watched his screens as more hidden weapons came online throughout the belt. "Tom to all asteroid stations," he announced. "Power up all systems. It's time to show these aliens what humans do to uninvited guests." Around him, his crew began the final preparations. Weapons that had been hidden for years hummed to life. Targeting systems locked onto the approaching Valdari fleet. Missile batteries loaded their deadliest ammunition. The Valdari continued their advance, completely unaware that they were flying into the most elaborate military trap in galactic history. They saw only the ruins of a dying civilization, never imagining that every single piece of debris around them was actually a weapon waiting to strike. In just 2 hours, they would discover that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their ships. It was their ability to make their enemies underestimate them right up until the moment of destruction. The trap was ready. The prey was walking right into it. The moment had finally arrived. Commander Thexval stood on his flagship's bridge, watching the pathetic collection of human mining ships drift through the asteroid belt ahead of them. His tactical officer was running final scans on the area, preparing to push through this worthless debris field toward Earth. "Commander, we're detecting some unusual energy signatures from the asteroids," the tactical officer reported, his voice uncertain. Thexval barely glanced at the readings. Probably just their primitive mining equipment still running. "These humans are too stupid to even properly shut down their operations before we destroy them." That was the last mistake the Valdari Empire would ever make. Deep inside Ceres, Captain Tom Bradley watched the enemy fleet move into perfect position on his tactical display. 50,000 alien warships had formed up in a tight formation, exactly where humanity wanted them. Bradley's finger hovered over a single red button that would change everything. "All stations report ready," announced the communications officer. "We have target locks on every enemy vessel." Bradley took a deep breath. "Tom to Admiral Morrison. The package is delivered and ready for unwrapping." Morrison's voice came back instantly. "Roger that, Tom. All units across the system. This is Admiral Morrison with a simple message." His voice carried every hidden weapon platform, every disguised ship, every secret base from Mercury to Pluto. "Fire." The word had barely left Morrison's lips when the entire solar system erupted in coordinated violence. What the Valdari had dismissed as broken mining equipment suddenly revealed massive railgun barrels. Cargo containers that had been drifting harmlessly through space split open like flowers, exposing rows of missile launchers. Asteroid mining platforms extended weapon arrays that had been hidden for decades. The first salvo caught the Valdari completely off guard. Tungsten rods the size of telephone poles, accelerated to incredible speeds by magnetic fields, punched through alien shields like they weren't even there. The Valdari had designed their defenses to stop energy weapons and explosive missiles, not solid metal projectiles, moving at a significant fraction of light speed. Captain Lisa Parker commanded the destroyer Phantom from her position behind one of Jupiter's moons. For 3 years, she had kept her ship powered down and hidden, waiting for this moment. Now her railguns were fully charged and ready. "Target their command ships first," she ordered her weapons officer, Lieutenant David Chun. "I want their leadership dead before they figure out what's happening to them." "Aye, Captain." "Firing now." The Phantom's main railgun discharged with a brilliant flash, sending a depleted uranium slug racing across space toward a Valdari flagship. The projectile covered the distance in seconds, punching through the alien ship's bridge and continuing out the other side, taking Commander Thexval and his entire command staff with it. Throughout the asteroid belt, Captain Bradley's hidden fortress was unleashing hell on the trapped alien fleet. Weapons that had been disguised as mining equipment for decades fired in perfect synchronization. Each shot was calculated to maximize damage, targeting engine sections, weapon batteries, and command centers. "Direct hit on their second command vessel," reported his tactical officer with grim satisfaction. "That's their fleet admiral gone." "Keep firing," Bradley ordered. "Don't give them time to adapt." The Valdari tried desperately to return fire, but their energy weapons were designed for ship-to-ship combat at long range. The humans were fighting from inside asteroids and hidden bunkers, making it almost impossible for the aliens to target them effectively. Worse, the Valdari had never faced kinetic weapons on this scale before. Their shields could deflect plasma beams and absorb missile explosions, but they couldn't stop solid metal rods traveling at relativistic speeds. Captain Robert Hayes emerged from behind Mars in a heavy cruiser Thunderbolt, leading a squadron of ships that had been hidden in the planet's shadow for months. His crew had been living on minimal power, eating cold rations and waiting for this moment. "All ships, concentrate fire on their left flank," Hayes ordered. "Let's roll up their formation from the outside in." The human ships moved with perfect coordination, each one targeting specific enemy vessels according to a battle plan that had been refined over years of preparation. While the Valdari fleet struggled to reorganize and respond to threats coming from every direction, the humans methodically destroyed their enemies with ruthless efficiency. What had started as an overwhelming alien advantage quickly became a massacre. The Valdari found themselves trapped in a kill zone with no escape routes, facing weapons they didn't understand from enemies they couldn't properly target. Their ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light, adding new stars to the dark sky of space. "Sir, the enemy fleet is trying to retreat," reported Bradley's communications officer. Bradley's smile was cold and hard. "Not today, they're not. All stations, pursue and destroy. No survivors, no witnesses." The ambush had worked perfectly. Humanity's greatest deception was now revealing its true purpose: the complete annihilation of anyone foolish enough to threaten Earth. The Valdari had walked into a trap 30 years in the making, and there would be no escape. The bridge of the Valdari flagship was a scene of absolute chaos. Sparks flew from damaged control panels, while emergency lights cast eerie shadows across the smoke-filled command center. Commander Thexval pulled himself up from the deck, his pale blue skin now stained with the dark blood of his species. Half of his bridge crew was dead, and the other half was desperately trying to keep their ship from breaking apart. "Damage report." Thexval shouted over the sounds of groaning metal and failing systems. "Sir, we've lost main power to decks 7 through 15, his surviving tactical officer reported, his voice shaking. "Life support is failing on 12 decks. Weapons are completely offline. We're dead in space." Around them, the once mighty Valdari fleet was being systematically destroyed. Through the cracked view screen, Thexval watched in horror as human ships moved between the burning wrecks of his vessels, methodically hunting down survivors. This wasn't how wars were supposed to be fought. There were rules, protocols that civilized species followed. "Open a channel to the human fleet," Thexval ordered, his voice hoarse from breathing smoke. All frequencies. The communication system crackled to life, and Thexval's desperate voice echoed across the solar system. "Human fleet, this is Commander Thexval of the Valdari Imperial Navy. We yield. We surrender unconditionally. Grant us quarter according to galactic law. Please, we have wounded aboard our ships who need medical attention." The response came back immediately, cold and final. Admiral Morrison's voice carried across space with the weight of absolute judgment. "Commander Thexval, this is Admiral Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. You came to our system with the stated intention of committing genocide against our entire species. You've done this to 1,000 other worlds across the galaxy. Your empire has shown no mercy to anyone who stood in your way." Morrison paused, letting his words sink in. Throughout the solar system, human forces continued their deadly work, pursuing every fleeing Valdari vessel with ruthless determination. "There will be no surrender today," Morrison continued. "No prisoners will be taken. No quarter will be given. You wanted to show the galaxy what happens to species that resist the Valdari Empire. Today, we're going to show the galaxy what happens to empires that threaten Earth." Thexval's face went pale as the communication ended. Around him, his surviving crew members looked at each other in growing terror. They had conquered 1,000 worlds, but they had never faced an enemy like this. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were doing it with a cold efficiency that was truly terrifying. Throughout the outer reaches of the solar system, Captain Mike Stevens was leading his hunter-killer squadrons in pursuit of fleeing Valdari ships. Stevens commanded the fast attack ship Razor, and he had spent years preparing for exactly this kind of operation. His ship was designed for one purpose: tracking down and destroying enemy vessels that tried to escape. "Captain, we've got 3 more Valdari destroyers trying to reach the system's edge," reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Kevin Walsh. "They're damaged but still moving." Stevens studied the display, calculating intercept courses and timing. "How long until they reach the jump point?" 18 minutes at their current speed, sir." "We'll catch them in 12, Stevens replied with cold certainty. "All squadrons, adjust course to intercept. Use the Jupiter gravity well to boost our speed." The human ships moved like a pack of wolves, using their superior knowledge of the solar system to outmaneuver their prey. They had hidden supply caches and fuel depots throughout the outer planets, allowing them to maintain pursuit even when their targets tried to flee to the edge of space. One by one, the fleeing Valdari ships were run down and destroyed. The aliens had no understanding of human tactics or the carefully prepared battlefield they had stumbled into. Every asteroid, every moon, every piece of space debris had been turned into either a weapon or a hiding place for human forces. "Sir, that's their last cruiser," Lieutenant Walsh reported, pointing to a heavily damaged Valdari ship limping toward the system's edge. The vessel was trailing atmosphere and debris, its engines flickering as they struggled to maintain power. Stevens watched the dying ship on his display for a moment. Inside that vessel were probably hundreds of alien crew members, some of them likely wounded or dying. In any other war, against any other enemy, he might have felt something approaching pity. But these weren't just enemy soldiers. These were the representatives of an empire that had burned entire worlds, that had come to Earth with the explicit intention of wiping out every man, woman, and child in the solar system. They had boasted about destroying 1,000 other civilizations. They had demanded humanity's surrender or total annihilation. "End it," Stevens said without emotion. The Razor fired a single tungsten rod from its main railgun. The projectile crossed the distance in seconds, punching through the Valdari cruiser's hull and detonating its reactor. The ship disappeared in a brilliant flash of light, taking its crew with it. Stevens turned away from the display as the last traces of the alien vessel faded into space dust. "All squadrons, report in. Any survivors?" The responses came back quickly from across the solar system. The answer was the same from every human unit. No Valdari ships remained. The mighty fleet that had come to destroy Earth was now nothing but debris floating in the vacuum of space. The message had been sent in the clearest possible terms. Anyone who came to humanity's home system with hostile intentions would find no mercy and no escape. The silence that followed the destruction of the Valdari fleet was almost deafening. Where moments before the space around Earth had been filled with the sounds of battle, weapon discharges, and the screams of dying ships, now there was only the quiet hum of human vessels moving through fields of debris. Pieces of alien warships drifted slowly through the vacuum, their twisted metal hulls reflecting the light of the sun like a graveyard of stars. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the cleanup operations begin. Salvage teams were already moving through the wreckage, collecting alien technology and ensuring that no Valdari had survived in escape pods or damaged sections of their ships. The orders were clear. No survivors, no witnesses, no possibility of the enemy learning from this encounter. But Morrison had one final card to play, one last message to send that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. "Kate, activate Protocol Omega," Morrison ordered, turning to Lieutenant Kate Phillips at the communication station. Phillips's fingers moved across her console with practiced efficiency. "Protocol Omega activated, sir. All recording systems have compiled the complete battle data. Automated probe ships are standing by for launch. On Luna Base, Colonel David Ross oversaw the most important deployment of his career. The lunar facility had been built specifically for this moment, housing hundreds of automated probe ships that had been waiting in underground silos for decades. Each probe was equipped with the fastest engines humanity could build and carried a single, devastating cargo: complete recordings of the Valdari fleet's destruction. Status report. Ross called out to staff as they prepared for launch. "All probes are loaded with battle footage, sir," reported his technical officer, Lieutenant Amy Carter. "We've got full tactical recordings from every angle, complete communication logs, and detailed scans of the Valdari fleet composition. The message is crystal clear." Ross nodded with satisfaction. "Message is simple," he told his staff, his voice carrying the weight of humanity's new position in the galaxy. "Any species that comes to Sol with hostile intent dies here. No exceptions, no survivors, no mercy." The first wave of probe ships launched from Luna's hidden silos with silent efficiency. These weren't ordinary spacecraft, but purpose-built messenger vessels designed for one mission: reaching every corner of Valdari space as quickly as possible. They would travel faster than any ship in the alien fleet could have managed, ensuring that the news of the Empire's destruction would spread before any other Valdari forces could mount a rescue mission. Within hours, the recordings would reach every Valdari world, every military base, every government facility in their empire. They would see their mighty conquest fleet, 50,000 ships strong, reduce to debris in a matter of hours. They would watch their commanders beg for mercy and receive only death in return. They would learn that the primitive humans they had dismissed so casually possessed weapons and tactics that made the Valdari look like children playing with toys. But the message wasn't just for the Valdari. Additional probe ships launched toward every known alien civilization in the galaxy, carrying copies of the battle recordings to species that had never heard of Earth or humanity. The galaxy would learn that there was a new power to be reckoned with, one that didn't play by the established rules of civilized warfare. Captain Tom Bradley emerged from his hidden fortress inside Ceres, finally able to see sunlight after years of living in the depths of the asteroid. Around him, his crew was already beginning the process of converting their weapon systems back to mining equipment, at least on the surface. The deception would continue, ready for the next threat that might come calling. Think anyone else would be stupid enough to try what the Valdari did? Asked his second-in-command, Lieutenant Peter Hayes. Bradley smiled as he watched Earth through the viewport, a blue jewel hanging in space that had just proven itself to be the most dangerous world in the galaxy. Oh, some will try eventually. There's always another empire that thinks they're unstoppable, another species that believes they can conquer anyone they want. On Earth itself, life was already returning to normal in the way that only humans could manage. In New York Central Park, children played on jungle gyms built directly over underground bunkers filled with antimatter warheads. Their parents pushed them on swings while discussing the morning's battle as casually as they might talk about the weather. In London, school children learned about the victory in their morning classes, then went outside for recess in playgrounds constructed above missile silos. Their teachers smiled and waved, knowing that beneath their feet lay enough firepower to glass continents. This was humanity's greatest strength, the ability to live normal, peaceful lives while simultaneously maintaining the most lethal defensive systems ever conceived. Every human colony, every space station, every seemingly innocent cargo ship was potentially a weapon of mass destruction waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. The Valdari Empire was finished, not just defeated, but completely eradicated. There would be no revenge fleets, no counterattacks, no attempts at negotiation. The probe ships would ensure that any surviving Valdari worlds understood exactly what had happened and why. Any other alien empires watching would receive the same message. Earth was off limits. Humanity had sent the clearest possible message to the galaxy. They were no longer the primitive species hiding on the edge of known space. They were the apex predators, and they were ready for whatever came next.